Everybody, and welcome. I'm Mo Ray, and it's good to be with you. A lot of things are going on, so much that it's, I guess you got to laugh rather than cry. You've got a situation, the ongoing demonstrations and violence in Portland, Oregon, as well as Kenosha, Wisconsin, and other cities. And the president, as we speak, it's a little after 5 o'clock Eastern Time, p.m., and the president is on the ground in Kenosha, Wisconsin right now. And let's hope there, of course, he's not visiting with the family of Jacob Blake. For one, he said he didn't do it because of, they wanted their lawyer on the line, and he didn't want any part of that. I don't know if they, this case is, well, there is no case yet. I mean, charges have been filed and, well, no, actually, no. What am I saying? No charges have been filed against any police. They're off on administrative leave, but no charges have been filed. And I guess the lawyer wanted to be there just to make sure that the family didn't say anything inappropriate. But the president felt that the lawyer being there was inappropriate, so that's not going to happen. But in case you haven't been keeping up with the news, let's start out at the beginning. I just want to go, and I got kind of a variety of sources today. This is actually from Canadian Broadcasting. This is from CBC, and this is their take on what's going on in, this is their take on what's going on in Portland.
The plan was for thousands of the president's supporters to drive their decorated vehicles around Portland.
We just want another 4 years of him doing great things for America.
But some in the pro-Trump caravan veered off the planned route, going into the city's downtown core, where startling confrontations with counter-protesters unfolded. A Trump flag is burned as insults and items are hurled at the vehicles. Trump supporters shot paintballs from an open truck bed and fired pepper spray. The evening turned deadly when a man standing in front of this parking garage was shot. Not much is known publicly about what led to this moment, but the victim has been linked to a pro-Trump group.
For those of you saying on Twitter this morning that you plan to come to Portland to seek retribution, I'm calling on you to stay away.
The president used social media to post dozens of messages denouncing the unrest while demanding local leaders call in the National Guard.
They continue to refuse any type of federal assistance to bring that violent activity going on for almost 90 days now, a little over 90 days, to a close.
Trump's re-election campaign is focused on this chaos, claiming things will get worse if Joe Biden wins because Democrats at the local level have failed to stop violent protesters.
These are people that every single night conduct violent acts, and it is in Democrat cities.
Democrats blame the unrest on the president's divisive rhetoric.
And now you want me to stop the violence that you helped create.
The chaos and the disorder and the lawlessness that we are currently seeing, that's Donald Trump's America.
Protest-weary residents say they're growing tired of conflict.
At the end of the day, there was no resolve and no mediation, and here we are, and now there's a dead body on the ground.
Trump wants law and order to be the deciding factor for voters. And as he puts so much emphasis on the issue, it steers the national conversation away from his handling of the pandemic. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
It is interesting to know that the whole world is looking at this. I've looked at reports from Deutsche Welle, which is the German news service, and they have an English wing. It's very good news. It's probably my second favorite after the BBC. But Deutsche Welle is following this, and the BBC, of course, is following this. So they're looking at, the whole world is looking at what's going on in the United States, in Portland, and in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I just want to say, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, I think they should put a hold on all these demonstrations. I just think because you've got people infiltrating, because now it's become a wedge issue of sorts. You've got Trump using the violence against Joe Biden and the Democrats, as I predicted was possible if the Democrats got too close to Black Lives Matter. By the way, a lot of the stuff, the really bad stuff that's going on, is not being perpetrated by members of Black Lives Matter. They are being perpetrated by another group that I've always been nervous about, the Antifa. I don't think it's interesting that the President of the United States wants to label Antifa a terrorist, a domestic terrorist group, but he has not wanted to call the KKK, the neo-Nazis, the Proud Boys, this Boogaloo movement, these guys with the Hawaiian shirts. None of them are a threat, even though they walk around with guns slung across their shoulders. Yet we're supposed to be more afraid of Antifa. But by the way, in 2017, when it was July 2017, when the president came to Youngstown, Ohio, I actually got to meet some people, and they were. It's basically they're like deadheads. During campaign season they followed Trump around just to with their kind of pretty semi-offensive signs and their bongos to make noise and all that. And this is what I'm saying. Some of these people aren't even politically interested. They're just there. There are members of the Antifa. When people hear that, they say, "Oh, anti-fascist, what's wrong with that?" But if you look at some of their actions, like when they were protesting Ann Coulter speaking in Berkeley, and they were breaking windows and all that, or when you have situations where they are engaging in physical altercations with Trump supporters. But by the way, that's a whole nother animal. The fact that 600 vehicles loaded up with Trump supporters and headed toward Portland to what? Just they claim they were just there, as Trump says, a peaceful protest. But what in fact happened was this thing got out of hand real quick, because some of the guys, you know, the original plan was just kind of like to cruise the perimeter of the city. But then some of these guys in their four-wheelers couldn't help themselves. When I say four-wheelers, I mean four-wheel pickup trucks, SUVs and such, with flags that bared not the name of Joe Biden, but the name of Donald Trump, because they waved that flag like it's co-equal to the flag of the United States of America, when nothing could be further from the truth. For a lot of us, Donald Trump represents everything that's wrong with this country. He's running his whole campaign based upon fear. But as I said, I think it would be wise to disband. My gosh, we're almost 90 days in Portland. What have they accomplished? And now you've got somebody who's been killed in Kenosha by somebody who probably wasn't a member of Black Lives Matter. Here's the thing where you have to look at, I welcome allies to help try to make things better for black people in America. But some of these people who are there, they're not there to perpetuate the message of Black Lives Matter. They're there to take advantage of the situation. The guy who was shot he was a member of a group that is a right-wing group, but most people who spoke of him spoke well of him, even people who didn't agree with his politics. Patriot's Prayer was the name of the group, by the way. But my problem with the whole thing is, if there's no protest, or at least limit your protests, as I've said before, to daylight hours, where there's less chance of something getting out of hand. I think that would be a heck of a lot better for all concerned. But this is, how did they not think trouble would come from this? This was what you would call, I call it the departure. And this was the other day when members, tons of Trump supporters decided they were going to show those Black Lives Matter protesters a little something. You know, and I caught myself yesterday, right back to Facebook. I caught myself, I blocked the guy right off the bat because, you know, we tried to go back and forth, and he said, well, why hasn't Biden spoke out against him? I sent an example from now 6 days ago and then from yesterday. And then he said, well, these are, you know, Biden's thugs. And I said, well, for one thing, they're not his thugs. If you look at these troublemakers, the people who were shooting the paintballs and spraying bear spray and pepper spray at these people, they were the ones with the Trump flags. They weren't Joe Biden supporters. Now, of course, people who might be more likely to vote for Biden were involved in the Black Lives Matter portion of the protest. But as I said, now that you've got all these outside actors coming in, they don't care about politics one way or the other. I'm telling you, I've talked to these people, and they're interesting, but there are, and you know, in case you don't know, you hear the word, what is an anarchist? Anarchist is basically just there to bring disorder. They want to tear the whole system down and start over. That's not what Democrats want. Now, there is a left side of the party, a farther left side of the party that would like to start over, the Bernie side of the party, or at least make major modifications to the system, but that's still not tearing the system down. And a lot of these guys, that's what they're about. They're just there to put graffiti on the walls and smash windows, and they don't care about the politics. But by embracing Black Lives Matter and by looking the other way on Antifa, the Democrats are really putting their position in peril. Now, depending on who you talk to, this is either has lowered Biden's numbers, or in some cases, some people say no effect whatsoever. But I still say, I really wish they could have some behind-the-scenes meetings and say, we have got to have a moderate image going forward if we stand a chance. We're coming up fast now on Election Day. And you don't want to have all these images of burning buildings in people's minds when they go to vote. Even though you can argue, you know, Trump is saying this will happen under Biden, it's happening under him. And another thing, another lie he told, he's talking about bringing in the National Guard. The governor had already called the National Guard in, which, by the way, is the governor's job, not the president's. He likes to, what I can't stand about this guy is his micromanaging. He wants to get involved in everything. Everything from whatever current event is going on, what some celebrity said, sports, everything. Everything except what he should be doing, as we are now at 180,000 deaths. In fact, if you want the exact number, as of about an hour ago, 183,050 deaths from the coronavirus, COVID-19, but you hear nothing about it from this administration anymore. Now he's got his own doctor. He's tried to silence Dr. Fauci. And you notice, that, as I've pointed out, at the Republican National Convention on their last day, they were sitting on the White House lawn, and the chairs were right next to each other. And maybe I saw one or two masks in that crowd. So they're trying to pretend everything's normal, but it's not. And we're about to find out. I think we're heading toward a second wave for a number of reasons, because of the way some of these school districts are handling their going back to school. And, well, I'm a little concerned. That's all I can say. And if I say, you know, I know I may seem a little disheveled mentally, but there's just so much going through my mind right now when I see what's going on, when I hear people using terms like civil war and all that. We don't want a civil war, because the thing is, we're not delineated by borders anymore. You might live right next door to a Trump supporter, or you might be a Trump supporter who lives right next door to a Biden supporter. We cannot descend into that. And that's why it saddens me that we have a president of the United States who refuses to condemn his own side when they cross the line, but he'll quickly call out the left. This is a news report from a CBS affiliate out of Florida, and they take a look at what's going on.
Associated with a right-wing group was shot and killed yesterday in Portland, Oregon. The violence broke out the same night a caravan of the president's supporters drove through the city's downtown area. Portland continues to deal with nightly protests in the wake of George Floyd's death. CBS 4's Tom Hansen has the latest.
After 3 months of protests, gunfire rang out Saturday night on the streets of Portland, leaving one man dead. Reports say the man was shot in the chest and that he was affiliated with the group Patriot Prayer, a right-wing political organization. It wasn't clear if the shooting was in connection with clashes between protesters and supporters of President Trump, who drove a caravan through the city that evening.
This is an active investigation, and our detectives are gathering information to determine what happened and what led up to this death.
at the end of the day, there was no resolve and no mediation, and here we are, and now there's a dead body on the ground.
President Trump shared video on Twitter Sunday of the caravan heading to Portland and wrote, "Great patriots."
He has an opportunity to uplift us and bring us together and help us move through this difficult situation in our nation's history, and instead he chooses to play petty politics and divide us.
On CBS's Face the Nation, acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf was asked if the Trump administration will ask everyone, including Trump supporters, to pull back.
We've been asking the governor and others to send in the National Guard to address the violence so that you don't have dueling demonstrations.
Authorities have released few details about the shooting, though they say they are aware of videos apparently showing it. Protests, sometimes violent, have been held nightly in Oregon's largest city since the Minneapolis police killing of George Floyd in late May.
You know, this is also tragic, and I don't know if you noticed, there's a guy because just as the shots were fired, a vehicle pulled in front of the camera. But there's a guy with long, like tube socks. He runs away. They think that's the shooter. And according to Inside Edition, there's even an idea who he might be. So hopefully we'll be hearing about that, and they can take care of him. You know, and they keep trying to, at least, we don't know for sure, but I seriously doubt this was a random shooting. I think that this person who leans to the right was probably shot by somebody who leans to the left, and that's terrible. You don't want that. You don't, you know, but then again, let's look at how many right-wing shooters have done mass shootings and that kind of thing. So there's enough blame to go around. There's enough nuts on both ends of the spectrum, and right now, I just think this is a very volatile time in this country. Those of us of a certain age, I think you've heard a lot of comparisons of 2020 to 1968. But things are different. In 1968, you had two major political assassinations of RFK and Martin Luther King Jr. You had the Vietnam War still ongoing. You had all kinds of, it was just the height of the hippie movement and all that. So we had those problems then, but now, and you had riots in the streets against the war in Vietnam then. Now the riots and the peaceful protests are for an end to police brutality and for true racial equality in this country. But the message gets lost when people start burning stuff. And you know, it's kind of sad that it's come to this point. I don't think the president is helpful, though, in some of his comments when he, you know, just like in the clip you just saw, when 600 vehicles of his faithful decide to go get involved in what's already a mess in Portland, he's basically cheering them on. He's, hey, they're just a bunch of patriots. Many whom have guns. And it is kind of ironic that all the deaths so far, and a thing that really started with the death of a black man, George Floyd, and with protests by a group called Black Lives Matter, all the deaths so far have been white men. Very interesting. But maybe it also shows how, even though we talk about being segregated and how we don't always understand each other, our lives are connected in this country. Two white guys that were shot by the 17-year-old, which, by the way, the president also seems to elevate him to hero status. The 17-year-old who's playing militiaman with his AR-15. And I know you've seen it. And, you know, I want to read some of the comments real quick, but I want to keep moving. Let's see. Yeah, we were off by about a minute, Tim, but, yeah, we're going now. And I agree with you totally. I've said it myself on social media. The president of his base, not all Americans. Absolutely true, Tim. And Robert says amen. And then Linda says, hey, Mo and Joe, hey, is it possible to expand your show to 2 hours? One isn't enough. Well, I'm open to that. We'll see. It's just a matter, there's only so many hours on the clock. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Tim says, please tell me just one great thing. Well, that's kind of cut. Just one great thing. 99% of us. I don't know what happened there. A new comment. Hold on. All right, hold on. I thought. Oh, don't you love it? It's live. Okay, can I scroll down? There we go. But there was more to that. Tell you what, how about the Republic cities? Well, Tim says, well, here's the thing. That argument that they make, there is some validity to it, Tim. If you look at some of these cities, I'm sure there's some lousy run Republican-led cities and states, but some of the problems they're talking about with fiscal responsibility, with crime, they are indeed in Democratic cities, it would appear. But it doesn't mean that those are all terrible cities. You do have, Trump is exaggerating the crime rates in some of those cities. Of course, Chicago has definitely had a problem for many years. But that is one thing that they can go with. So this is what I was talking about, though. You've got to look at the big picture. So if all he had to run with was saying Democratic-run cities were poorly run, that's one thing. But when you have the Democratic Party somewhat entangled with Black Lives Matter, when you have the far left in Antifa perpetrating vandalism and other things, and that's associated, maybe not rightfully, but that's associated with Democrats. Those are negatives, and that's why the president is riding so high on his law and order message. But that's one of the most ironic things. When you look, as I've pointed out many times, you look at which side has the most people who are either convicted felons, or maybe they've had their sentences commuted at this point, or guys like Steve Bannon who have just recently been arrested. They're all on his side, yet this guy's talking about law and order. By the way, let's mention the fact that if he loses in November, then speaking of criminals, he will be indicted by the Southern District of New York in the Michael Cohen campaign finance case. So the man who likes to talk about law and order is a potential criminal himself, an unindicted co-conspirator. But let's keep rolling. Kelly McEnany was asked if the president today, this was asked yesterday, if the president would be visiting with the family of, oh my gosh, all the times I've mentioned him, Jacob, what's Jacob's last name? Okay, after all the time, Jacob Blake. If the family, see, you can see this show, you see did you hear the wheels creaking there? Okay, but anyway, we'll see if the president will be visiting with the family of Jacob Blake.
On Friday, if he thought the shooting of Jacob Blake was justified, and he said that he didn't like the sight of it, but that he was going to learn more about it. Now that a couple of days has passed, does the president think this shooting was justified or unjustified?
I'd refer you back to the president's remarks. There's an investigation ongoing, so I spoke to him earlier, and he was not willing to weigh in more than he had, but he'll have a briefing this afternoon that you can ask him more about.
So based on what he's seen, he doesn't have any further thoughts on whether that's appropriate?
I'd refer you back to his comments over the weekend and just say there's an ongoing investigation.
Just one other thing. Does the president condemn the actions of Kyle Rittenhouse, who is accused of shooting some of the protesters?
The president is not going to, again, weigh in on that. You can ask him this evening. He may weigh in further, but at the moment, he's not weighing into that. Yeah.
Why did the president like a tweet that said the alleged shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse, was a good example of why I decided to vote for Trump? Can you help us understand?
Well, I think I did ask him about that tweet and the like in particular, and he just wanted to bring some attention to some of the details that aren't as well known in that case, that the individual was being attacked, and that one of the individuals who arrived on the scene did have a gun. So there were some details that were not public or as public as they should be, so he was referring to that with the like.
Does he want his supporters to show up and do similar?
Of course, and the president roundly condemns violence in all of its forms.
Well, that's what she says, but let's remember how we got here, because the president did finally give an opinion on Kyle, on the shooter named, I've been writing his name all day, Kyle Rittenhouse, and this is what happens when I don't drink my coffee. I can tell you that. No, seriously, I can tell there's a difference in the energy today, so apologies for that. But anyway, yes, the shooter's name, the 17-year-old with the AR-15, his name is Kyle Rittenhouse. And there it is. Okay, let's remember how we got here, though, if you want to see him in trouble. I mean, well, the president said he was in trouble. But let me set this up. And it goes pretty quick, but the shooter, and you actually see him shoot the second person dead, the shooter was running because he had just shot the first victim in the head. And then I wouldn't have done it, but these people decided to try to chase him down to take his gun from him. And this is cell phone footage, but, well, yeah. I mean, talking to my producer, was that running? Okay.
He just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot all of them down there! That dude just shot them right there! That dude right here! Here!
Someone injured straight ahead.
The interesting thing about that is, I know that was a little grainy, but did you notice that I believe I counted 4 police vehicles drove right past this guy who's walking down the street with a rifle after a shooting? And in fact, I didn't know this. They arrested him back at his home in Illinois. So this guy shot 3 people in all that night, killing 2. And then he walks right past the cops with his gun. People are shouting, hey, this guy just killed 2 people. And this guy apparently just jumped in his car, or well, his mom drove him down there, and went back home where he was arrested. I'm sure that happens in the hood all the time. But anyway, that was very interesting. And by the way, let's remember also, before all the shootings started, these guys were kind of doing a public service. They were taking graffiti off a wall, and the cops even gave them water. The cops even said they were glad to see them. You see a bunch of guys walking around with AR-15s slung across their shoulders. They're not military. They're not trained. They're just civilians. And the cops say, glad to see you. But this is how this evolved. But this is even more fascinating. An even higher official in government seems to have a favorable impression of Kyle Rittenhouse.
Supporter of yours saying, are you going to condemn the actions of vigilantes like Kyle Rittenhouse?
Well, we're looking at all of it. That was an interesting situation. You saw the same tape as I saw, and he was trying to get away from them, I guess, it looks like, and he fell, and then they very violently attacked him, and it was something that we're looking at right now, and it's under investigation, but I guess he was in very big trouble. He would have been. He probably would have been killed. But it's under investigation.
Do you think private citizens should be taking guns?
I'd like to see law enforcement take care of everything. I think everything should be taken care of, law enforcement. But again, we have to give our cops back, our police back, their dignity, the respect. They're very talented people. They're strong. They're tough. They can do the job. But we've taken it away. We don't want to have. When somebody makes a mistake, he chokes, or in some cases you have bad cops, so we have to take care of that. In other cases, they choke. They have a quarter of a second to make a decision. And sometimes they make the wrong decision. If they make the wrong decision, if they make the wrong decision in the other direction, they're probably dead. So they choke sometimes. And that goes on the evening news for weeks. And the thousands and tens of thousands of great things they do, nobody covers that. Nobody writes about that. But if they make a mistake, and again, the bad cops, everybody agrees they have to be very tough on bad cops. But sometimes you have a cop or a police person who is a good police person, right? Good. But they choke. You know, the timing, and they go through this, and they study this, and they work on it all the time. They literally have a quarter of a second to make some of these decisions. And they make a wrong decision, and it's very devastating. But I will say this, I honor law enforcement. We wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for law enforcement.
Well, I honor law enforcement too, but the president's characterization of them choking, kind of ironic since a lot of this stuff started with the choking death of George Floyd at the knee of a police officer. But the thing is, his thought process is amazing as you watch him explain his thought process. So, okay, so the cop chokes. Well, when that cop chokes, somebody dies if he makes a mistake. But it sounds like all his sympathy is with the police officer. Listen, I get it. But you can't just, you know, what about the civilian that could get killed by that cop choking? He doesn't see, you know, he makes a quick glancing comment about, yeah, I'm against bad cops. But the whole time he's defending the actions of cops and even allowing for an occasional oops. The problem is when a guy is using a gun, that oops could result in the death of a civilian. So I really, you know, I'm all for law enforcement, but this president is too focused on law enforcement. In his world, as I've said, it appears that a bad cop is as rare as Halley's Comet. You only see a bad cop about every 75 years, when the statistics would indicate that's not true. Of course, these people, you know, there's a thing they're writing on the wall, no cop are good cops or something like that. No, all cops are bad cops. That's it. AC, well, you got me, you know. So I don't, this is a great day, isn't it? But anyway, of course all cops aren't bad cops, but neither are they all angels, and we need to hold the bad ones accountable. And again, I know the police unions like to stand behind their people, but I would think there'd be some openness to trying to deal with this. That blue wall of silence needs to go away. You're not doing your profession any favors by keeping that bad cop on the force. You're making people look at you in a more negative light. So I would think you'd want those guys gone. But by the way, premiering today on demand on multiple platforms is a new documentary about this president, and it's called Unfit. And this is just a quick promo for it. And as I said, if you're a streamer, you can stream it all kinds of places, and it tells you at the end.
To serve as the president and commander-in-chief? No.
We are finally putting America first.
It's an anger-based vote.
Sociopaths can be successful because they're con men.
The ultimate aim is to get people to believe that reality is what they say it is.
He is evil. He does not believe in democracy.
He's not fit to serve.
We have a duty to war.
We cannot be silent.
And there you go. Yeah, so Unfit, you can just put it out there. Whatever your streaming platform is, you should be able to see it. And it sounds like it's worth seeing. There's some of the people involved. Some of the people there, I noticed there was Bill Kristol, there was George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, who has stepped away from the Lincoln Project and probably, you know, was involved with that movie before his departure from politics. He's temporarily stepped away for family reasons, and she stepped away from the White House as of today for family reasons. And I hope they can work it out. I always wondered how that marriage worked anyway. She's working for the president that the husband hates. And there's no doubt in my mind, a lot of people thought of some kind of head game, but no. If you read his comments or if you've read any of his editorials, George Conway is no fan of this president. He thinks he's destroying not only the Republican Party, but this country with his style of leadership. Let's, what's up next? you know, a lot of that's another thing. Joe Biden did denounced violence from the left and the right, and Trump told it. He lied again. He said he didn't denounce from the other side. Well, yes, he did, in fact. And Biden, and I'm not even attempting a Trump impression, but Biden was in Pittsburgh yesterday, and he made these remarks.
Is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Violence will not bring change. It will only bring destruction. It's wrong in every way. It divides instead of unites. Destroys businesses, only hurts the working families that serve the community. It makes things worse across the board, not better. No, it's not what Dr. King or John Lewis taught, and it must end. Fires are burning, and we have a president who fans the flames rather than fighting the flames. But we must not burn. We have to build. This president, long ago, forfeited any moral leadership in this country. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. You know, he may believe mouthing the words law and order makes him strong, but his failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is. Does anyone believe there'll be less violence in America if Donald Trump is reelected?
I don't. And sadly, there'll probably be violence if Joe Biden is elected. But this is the world we live in. We have polar opposite views of what we want from this country, what kind of country we want it to be. And I've never in my life seen it so divided. As I said, with the exception of maybe the Vietnam era, I was just a kid then. But now that I'm fully aware of what's going on around me, it is frightening and it is depressing because you just don't know where it's going to go. You don't know, you know, when you see these people who are so thoroughly enthralled by Donald Trump, if he loses fair and square, will not only the president, but will his supporters accept it? Or will they think it was some deep state trick? You know, I love it. I'm so sick of hearing about the deep state and fake news. Just because news is not flattering doesn't make it fake. And we've always had government bureaucrats who worked under multiple presidents. It's their job. If you're going to do 30 years with the government, that means you're probably going to work under Democrats and Republicans. I don't anticipate that everybody likes the president they worked under, but they just got their job done. That's what's happening now. Unfortunately, the president is obsessed with his paranoid fever dream of the deep state, and he's passed it on to others. And now you have the expansion of Q, this crazy conspiracy kook group that is even starting to get its tentacles into legitimate government office now. At least 2 members will be joining the Congress real soon, I believe in the fall. We're going into fall now, technically. But that should make you nervous that we're in a world where we should be smarter than ever. And people are crazy enough to believe the most absurd conspiracy theories, including the President of the United States. And I think I'm really upset with him the most because he's got all the knowledge of all the smartest people in this country at his fingertips. Instead, he gets his ideas off the internet and from Fox and Friends. And I just don't get it. He's not grown at all into the office, just as former President Obama said. He's the same guy who was elected 4 years ago, if not worse. And if reelected, I think you know he'll be even worse because he'll feel like, hey, that's it, man. I got nothing to lose. You know, nobody's calling me out. Let's go for it. Of course, the hopeful signs on that is that there is a very good chance that the Democrats will flip the Senate. So even if he wins, you know, he can't do everything by executive order. So he would be a little bit kneecapped if that were to take place. But hopefully, the Democrats can get the trifecta, both chambers of Congress and the White House. That remains to be seen. But let's go back to the situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the shooting of Jacob Blake. This is Jacob Blake's mother, and she should be bitter and angry, but she's not. And we need to, I think we could all learn a lesson from her.
Through here, through the city, I noticed a lot of damage. It doesn't reflect my son or my family. If Jacob knew what was going on as far as that goes, the violence and the destruction, he would be very unpleased. So I'm really asking and encouraging everyone in Wisconsin and abroad to take a moment and examine your hearts. Citizens, police officers, firemen, clergy, politicians, do Jacob justice on this level and examine your hearts. We need healing. As I pray for my son's healing, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I also have been praying even before this for the healing of our country.
And that was Julia Jackson, the mother of Jacob Blake. And as I said, I'm just totally impressed by her grace and her message there. Not anger, not lashing out. Just, we need to come together. And let's remember, her son was shot 7 times in the back at close range. Let's remember, her son was not an angel. He did have a criminal record. But last time I checked, even criminals have constitutional rights. And even Trump at one point was saying that he didn't understand why that wasn't handled a little differently. Of course, he's never going to say anything about the cop, but, you know, maybe they could have wrestled with him or something. But to just shoot the guy at point-blank range. Now, to be clear, prior to what we saw on the tape of him being shot, he had actually had one officer in a chokehold, and he had actually had a taser used on him. So they did try to go non-lethal on him. But I still don't understand, even though, yes, he had exhibited that behavior. I've played the video last week of the guy who literally got in a cop car, chased the cop around, and not a shot was fired. Yet this man is shot 7 times at close range, and amazingly is still alive, although looks like he will be paralyzed. Just a tragedy. And not only that, they even had him handcuffed to the bed. Why do you handcuff a guy to a bed who's paralyzed? Well, I guess somebody could slide a wheelchair in, but they anything they had against him, they've dropped, you know, probably just trying to cover their butts a little bit because they know this is going to be a big, ugly case. Even in the Wild West, shooting a man in the back even once was pretty cowardly. 7 times at close range? Wow. Do they teach that at the police academy? I don't think so. But let's go to what's next. There's something else that's going on you might not be aware of, and that is the fact that they are putting deceptive videos out. When I say they, I mean the Trump campaign. And I want you to watch this and let's see. Anyway, let's just watch this real quick. There's a couple examples of deceptive videos by the Trump campaign.
I want to make clear here, I often find it dangerous to even show these at all, but I'm doing it because I want people to know how they're being manipulated. So it's a video posted by White House social media director Dan Scavino, showed what appeared to be an interview between Joe Biden and then local news anchor Lela Santiago, who is now an awesome reporter here at CNN. And the video makes it appear that Biden fell asleep. So, Donnie, why is this so deceptive?
Hey, John. Yeah, well, that interview never actually happened. Leila Santiago did not interview Joe Biden on that local news report. The interview that took place happened in 2011, and it was Leila interviewing Harry Belafonte. And take a look at the original footage.
Hey, good morning, Harry. Harry, wake up. Harry?
So what happened there then is that the Trump campaign took old footage of Biden and replaced that where you see Belafonte there. Belafonte responding overnight, telling Maggie Haberman that they keep stooping lower and lower. A technical glitch in an interview I did 9 years ago now becomes another one of their lies, more of their fake news. I beg every sane American, please vote them out. Now, Twitter labeled that video as manipulated media, but these labels on these videos are tiny. The company eventually removed the video last night, not because it was false, but because of a copyright claim. But John, by the time it was removed, it had 2.4 million views.
It's like getting Al Capone for tax evasion. So Daniel, your turn. Twitter flagged another video posted by the Trump campaign account as manipulated media, in which Joe Biden's words are clearly taken out of context. So what happened here?
So the Trump campaign has a so-called war room account that, like the White House itself, is determined to portray Biden as old or confused or senile. And to do so, they keep clipping his quotes, his coherent quotes, in ways that make them seem incoherent or confused. So first, take a look or listen at the version of the quote that the war room had Biden saying.
You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
So that makes it sound like Biden confused himself with Donald Trump. In fact, he did not. What he was saying was that although Trump and Pence argue that you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America, the images of violence you're seeing now are actually from Donald Trump's America. Listen to the actual quote.
Since they have no agenda or vision for a second term, Trump and Pence are running on this, and I find it fascinating. Quote, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America. And what's their proof? The violence we're seeing in Donald Trump's America.
So the snip by the war room was just wildly inaccurate, John. Now, what was interesting was when called on the dishonesty, the campaign war room account basically just said, lighten up, fools. They said, you know, we're joking. You need to be able to take a joke. And this is the game they play. They do something wildly dishonest. They get the dishonesty to many people, sometimes millions. And then when called on that dishonesty, they just say, this is comedy and you should be able to take a joke better.
Yeah, isn't that great that that's the way we're going to do politics now, that you're going to blatantly lie or manipulate video or audio, and then you're going to, when somebody catches you, you just say, suck it up. But that's the way this campaign is going to go. Now, I'm not saying that the Democrats aren't going to play some dirty tricks, too. In fact, I wish they'd get started real soon. The whole thing of, you know, when they go low, we go high. Personally, I think it's time to start kicking in the crotch as far as I'm concerned. I think they've gone low for the last 4 years, and it's time to take this very seriously. We're in the last less than 70 days now. They won't be playing nice, and maybe before it's all said and done, the Democrats shouldn't be either. Nobody likes it when it gets too ugly, but we need to do something different. You know, there's just not enough time to show that because we got to get out of here. I will respect the constraints of time, and we're going to get our discipline together around here on that. If the show seemed a little disjointed today, I do apologize. I think it went pretty well. Real quick on the way out, thank you, Debbie. She says I'm looking good in my black shirt. Thank you. And let's see, Stanley says he's glad he found me, and I'm glad you did too, sir. Tell your friends, like us on Facebook. And you can also check us out on Spotify and iTunes, audio. And
call in, too.
Oh, you can call in, which I never gave the number the whole time, but just write it down for next time. I'm back on Thursday at 5:05. You can reach us at 330-595-1600. I'd love to hear from you, whether we agree or not. And one more quick one from Tim. He says his only concern is his own interest to get reelected. Malignant narcissist. The USA needs a leader, not a wisecracking egomaniac. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, Tim, because I 100% agree with you. I want to thank you all once again. And I want to thank Mario for doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And we'll be back with you on Thursday. I'm Mo Ray saying, well, of course, during this pandemic, be safe out there. And what do I always say? Well, I always say, keep your eyes on the prize.